The Works Every Time layout was created for non-designers who might find themselves in a position of having to do a flyer or a PowerPoint presentation or something for work without having the benefit of several years of art school under their belts. The Works Every Time layout is based on how we read in Western culture, left to right, top to bottom, and for those of you who know something about advertising history, it also draws heavily on the work of Ogilvy, whose ads are iconic in the field. So there are actually 7 parts to the Works Every Time layout. I am going to work you through those by showing you kind of building an ad as we go. First step is margins. Step number 1, margins. In this case, you are going to include outer boundaries of your document. I've got a 5x7 ad going here. You might have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. That's going to be your first guideline. Next guideline, just as if not more important, are going to be the inner margins that you create, here represented by pink and purple lines. Those pink and purple lines are going to go, depending on where you set them, they can be 1/2 inch margins. You can have 1 inch margins. If you have a specific ad, you might want to make those margins equivalent to whatever live area they give you. Bottom line is that they are going to ensure that you have some white space in your ad, keeping text and other things from being cropped off accidentally. And as you all know, white space is not your enemy. Okay, step number 2 is to create yourself some sort of column grid. You can create a uniform grid. I'm going to go ahead and create a uniform grid right now using a column setup, just creating 2 columns. Or you could manually create some column guides if you wanted more of an uneven set. It all depends on what you've got going on, but you do want some, because shorter columns are easier for people's eyes to scan back and forth and read. Your next step is to actually add the graphic, something very bold, something very eye-catching. And we recommend that you put it at the top, because the viewer's eye has a tendency to go to, well, photos are magnets. Your eye is going to go right to them. And then the eye has a tendency by nature to fall to what's below. So if you put the photo at the bottom, your eye is going to go to the bottom and then fall right off the page, and you're going to lose your reader. So you want to keep those visuals at the top. Make them bold, make them speak, make them the focal point. So placing your graphic or your visual is step number 3. Step number 4 is placing cut lines. And because this is an ad, we aren't actually going to have a cut line. If you were doing something more like a newsletter story that had a picture at the top, the next thing immediately below that photo would be your cut line. Like I said, in this case, we are going to skip over that piece because this is an ad and we do not have a cut line. If you do have one, make it span the width of the photo. It should be the same width as the photo. Number 5 is to actually add your main headline, and usually that's going to go right below that cut line. It would be photo, cut line, followed by headline. It needs to be also big and bold. It should be the next biggest thing after your photo. And a couple of things about it. In this case, I've got a very, very short 1 word. But if you've got a headline that is multiple words, maybe it even extends to 2 lines deep, watch where it breaks. You don't want to have a whole long line of headline and then 1 lone little word following it. So do be careful of breaks. We discussed that more in the Works Every Time layout chapter in the White Space is Not Your Enemy book. We've got some good tips for that. After the headline is placed, your next main element to place is going to be your other text, and I've just popped in a subheading and a block of text. Again, these go below your headline. Make sure that your text, that you choose a readable font for your text, depending on where you're going to go. Typically, a good option is going to be a 10 to 11 point old style, something that looks like Times Roman. Or in this case, because I've got a fairly small amount of copy, I can get away with a sans serif font. Do make sure that when you place your text, that it is flush left, ragged right. About the only people that can really, really get away with fully justified text, and that is when you've got flush left and flush right all together. About the only people who can really get away with doing that are newspaper designers and professional graphic designers. If you try to do it yourself, what you end up with, and I have just done it to this text, is really, really ugly gaps in the text. Not good for reading, not pretty visually, so we do recommend that you go with a flush left, ragged right text. Makes all the text balance much, much better. Final piece to add to the Works Every Time layout are going to be what we call the tags. This is the logo information. This is the contact information. You might lead this area off with a call to action, as we would do in advertising and public relations applications for this sort of layout. Include a URL if you've got one. Include the phone numbers if you've got them. All these things become part of the tags, and we typically put them in the lower right corner in most cases because this is where your eye is going to exit. Remember, left to right, top to bottom. So, steps again, Works Every Time layout. Create your margins. Create yourself a set of column guides to work within. Add yourself your graphic or your visual at the very top. Add a cut line if there is one and make it span the width of your photo. Follow this with a headline, make it big and bold immediately below that cut line. Followed with your text, which is number 6, and number 7 is place your tags in the lower right. That's the basic overview of the Works Every Time layout.